Hey guys, just want to add a little warning here that this week's episode includes talk of sexual abuse, and it might be a little triggering to some people, to some listeners. So just wanted to give you a little bit of warning and heads up. I think it's a really important topic and a really important episode, but I also want to make sure that I take care of you and I'm responsible for your emotional well-being.
Welcome to the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, where we have open and honest conversations about co-parenting, separation, divorce, and the hardest question of all, should you stay or should you go? I'm Kate Anthony, your Divorce Survival Guide, and I'm here to help you navigate some of the roughest waters you've ever swum in and answer some of your toughest questions. I've been to hell and back. And now it's my mission in life to help you get to the other side of this process with your sanity and your heart intact.
Hey everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Divorce Survival Guide podcast. How's everyone doing? It is my birthday week, y'all. That's right. By the time you listen to this, I will be 50 years old. And I don't really have a whole lot of words of wisdom about turning 50. I mean, I do, right? I mean, I think that I will say that I think that the content of my podcast is the wisdom, right? It's the culmination of the wisdom that I've learned in 50 years on this planet and my journey of being on this planet. And so I guess I have a lot of wisdom to share. It's just not like today I'm going to give you all the wisdom. I'm going to give you the wisdom like I do every week. Here's one thing. Here's one thing I will say to you. The wisdom that I have at the age of 50 is I am so much happier on my own and being alone than I was being lonely in my marriage. And so many women come to me and they talk about, will I ever find love? Will I find something different? Is there something better out there? And you know what? Here's the deal. You are better. You are the better out there. You are the prize, right? It's not some other dude. It's not another husband. It's not like this or that, right? It's you. You're the fucking prize. Your peace and serenity and happiness, that's the fucking prize. And I can say that as a 50-year-old woman who is single and has been divorced for 12 years and has been in, a few really wonderful relationships since my marriage ended, and some not so wonderful. But I've never been happier. I've never been more at peace. And it's not because I have a man in my life. Do I want one? Sure. Abso-fucking-lutely. But I will sure as fuck not settle for anything less than what I really, really desire, the intimacy that I really desire. And that's what I want for all of you as well. Happy 50th birthday to me. All right, and on to today's podcast. Today I have my dear friend, Dawn Tyree. Dawn is an author, activist, and a founding member of the National Coalition to End Child Marriage in the U.S. Her story, guys, is unbelievable. Just as an aside, Elizabeth Vargas did a sort of a documentary thing on child marriage. And me, I'm like all about these like true crime kinds of stuff. And it was totally up my alley. And I was like, oh man, I got to watch this. And I'm watching it and suddenly I'm like, wait a minute. I know that woman. I am friends with that woman in this documentary. And I was Facebook friends with her for a long time. And I was like, oh my God. But we didn't really comment on each other's stuff. But like, I was like, her name, like, I know this person. And by the end of it, I was so blown away. And I reached out to her and I was like, I just watched your thing and I need to have you on my podcast. So that's why she's here. And since then we've, now we're friends. So, Dawn is currently working with the Global Hope 365 to help end child marriage in California. She was herself a child bride. And when I say child bride, I mean, she was married off to her sexual abuser at the age of 13. And her testimony and that of other survivors played a crucial role in ending child marriage in 4 U.S. states. By the way, 4. Child marriage is now illegal in just 4 states. And the story of her experience as a child forced into marriage has been published in the New York Times, Reuters, The Sun, Daily Mail, the News Review, all over the place. Yes Magazine, and printed into 12 different languages. Dawn works with multiple organizations and universities across the nation to help educate and offer support in comparative studies internationally on child marriage and human rights abuse issues. She was featured, this is where I saw her, in a 2-hour documentary on child marriage in the U.S. as part of the A&E Network docuseries I Was a Child Bride, The Untold Story with Elizabeth Vargas. Dawn continues her activism work in tandem with writing her harrowing story of overcoming the toughest of odds. And she is currently enjoying a very happy life in the Pacific Northwest on the coast. It's really beautiful where she lives. And, I want to preface this, and I think we get to it pretty quickly in the episode. Dawn is not a member of some, fanatical religious cult. She is not a member. Her family is not FLDS. This is not the kind of thing that you're like, oh, that only happens in religious cults. Nope. It happened to her. And it happens to thousands of girls, I think, every year. And especially since it's not illegal in all 50 states, which you'll understand why in this episode. There's a lot of stuff in here that's going to blow your mind. And I'm bringing this to you because I think this is an incredible story to tell. As you know, I am a fierce feminist, and I want to dig into all of the roots of patriarchal oppression of women. And when girls are sexually abused from the age of 11 and given to their abusers to be married at the age of 13, because that is the only solution a family can think of when a victim becomes pregnant, we have a huge fucking problem. So, we, in this conversation, get into the nitty-gritty details of a lot of the problem and what we can start to do about this. And I think this is, listen, you guys want a cause, you want to, get to patriarchy smashing, here's one, big time. So, this conversation, this whole story makes me so angry in so many ways. And I try to control and curb my outrage in the episode. And I'm not really sure I do a good job. But you know what? If you're not outraged by the end of this, then I don't know what to tell you. And also inspired, because Dawn is a fucking fierce survivor. And she has turned this into an incredible life's work. And I'm so deeply, deeply honored that she agreed to come on the podcast and tell us her story. Here she is. Hey, Dawn.
Hi there.
Hi. Thanks for coming on and talking to us and telling us your story.
Yes. Thank you for
really
having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like I told you, I woke up this morning and I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited I get to talk to Dawn today.
Well, thank you.
So why don't you just start off, just tell us your story, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, my name is Dawn Tyree, and I was forced to marry at 13 years old here in the United States. My family had taken on a care provider for me, so kind of like a nanny. And so he began to sexually abuse me when I was 11 years old, and the abuse went on for a couple of years. And when I became pregnant, the fix-all for everyone involved was to get married, for me to marry this man.
And you were 13 years old at the time.
I was 13 years old and he was 32.
Yeah. So if I remember correctly, right, like he had been with your family and then your family decided to move away and they left you in his care alone.
That's right. That's right.
And he had already been sexually abusing you. And you had told you had told your parents that this was happening or not?
There were little snippets, information that leaked. Different times where I was calling my parents, crying, get me out of here. I want to be with you. They had moved to Texas. My stepmother would just kind of discount that I was overreacting, to them not being right there in my life. And as I look back now, any one of us would say, holy shit, you have your 12-year-old daughter calling you, crying, saying, get me out of here now. I need to come and be with you. I think most of us would evaluate that situation.
Well, most of us wouldn't go.
Okay, we back up a little. Most of us wouldn't leave our pubescent child with a grown man in another state.
Right. Let's start there. But yes, if then there was a call that was desperate, one would presumably look into that a little bit, and they didn't.
Right.
And they didn't. And then you became pregnant, and their response to that was, "You should get married because that's what we do."
Right. I mean, and there is some of that. I can remember. Well, not necessarily. It's the little windows of what you hear, or when you look at the picture and you think you remember that actual moment, but you're just if that picture has been with you your whole life. And so there was a time when a couple of family members said, "I guess we'll do what we've always done, or we do what we've done before." And I haven't been able to peel back that onion as far as I'd like to go. So basically,
talk to me about that. Right? Like, how many times has this happened? Is this like a family historical sort of systemic thing? Like, that's crazy.
Well, this sexual abuse is definitely, as you go back generations, there's some sexual abuse that was happening to the women in my life before me. And so their idea of sexual abuse is that, you keep your mouth shut, press forward. I was told, do you think you're the only one that this happens to? Like, move on. Again, getting married was saving this family friend that everyone loved and adored from, any sexual abuse charges, statutory rape, any jail time, prison time. And of course, with my parents, just abandoning me. Certainly there would be some sort of investigation or child neglect charges against them. So, just hurry up, damage control, fix it all, get married, never have to deal with this situation again.
So, it's just all of this, as you know, blows my mind, and it shouldn't, right? The problem is that it actually shouldn't blow my mind because it happens. The system is set up to let that happen. And we'll get into that in a second. What I want to sort of impress upon people listening is that you were not being raised in a religious cult. When I first heard your story and I first watched the Elizabeth Vargas piece, my thought was like, oh, all of these women, all of them, are obviously like FLDS, like obviously, right? And then I watched and realized, oh no, none of them are. Like this is happening outside of what we would normally think it's happening. This is not a Warren Jeff situation. This is, yeah. And so then you went to the courthouse. You went to the courthouse to get married.
That's right.
And the judge asked you if you wanted to get married, which I suppose was
little, right.
Vetting, perhaps, like, is this situation okay?
There really wasn't any in-depth conversation about the marriage. It was really businesslike. My dad was there. None of us were happy. Perhaps, the groom, maybe. For 2 weeks, he was crying and pleading, please marry me. I'll take care of you. I love you. You'll be, for the rest of your life, you'll be okay. I'll provide for you. And you won't have to be around your stepmother any longer. But yeah, so in the courthouse, it was really straightforward. And of course, I don't know when these trusted adults in my life applied for the marriage license. I mean, we know now, like you apply for a license and go through all these steps. To me, it was all wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. It was really fast. We
married. Yeah.
Right. And we were out of there. One signature, no notification to my biological mother. I mean, nothing. My dad just signed a sheet of paper and I was, bam, wedlock.
And the judge asked you if you want to get married. And you said yes, because you had been told for the previous few days or whatever, at least, right? Like that, like this is happening and this is the best thing for you. So you were really sort of manipulated into believing that this was the best choice for you.
Right. Definitely by my stepmother and my abuser for a couple of weeks. It was like, you need to tell people that you want to get married. If anyone asks, you need to say that this is what you want, you want to have the baby. And of course, I actually did want to have the baby. Like the thought of it, it's really bizarre as I look back now. It's like, I didn't even really know what abortion was, but I knew it wasn't something I wanted to put my body through. And so at that time, it was like, yeah, I guess I'm going to have a baby. So the manipulation.
It wasn't like anyone in your life was saying, here are your choices that you can make for your own body and you can decide, right? And that was not even on the table.
It was not. And, there were so many different mixed messages through the 2 weeks. Because again, I mean, these are adults that were just trying to figure out, what the hell to do with this situation. And I can remember like my stepmother, well, if you're going to have the baby, you're not staying with me. And just all this different information that as a 13-year-old, what do I do with this information? Well, I guess I'm going to listen, to this dude that's been a part of my life, a constant in my life for over 2 years. And I'm going to do what he says now.
Right. Because he says he loves me. So
right.
I guess that makes sense. Right.
And he's been there for me when my parents left and, left me behind in another state. I mean, he was a constant in my life.
And you were a child.
I was a child.
So you got married, you had the baby, you had your son. Right?
Yes.
And then you had a daughter, right?
13 months later. And we know now that married teens will typically have their second child within the first 24 months. And so again, just setting them up for a cycle of not becoming who they can be in life.
Yeah. So how did you get out? What happened?
It was after my daughter was born that I started to have almost a spiritual awakening. Having my son was a little different and I was younger. Like, oh, wow, I'm a whole year older now. I know everything.
Now I know.
But having a daughter, after she was born, I that fear started to seep into my heart, my mind, and my body. I was living in fear for her safety and, becoming more and more aware of what a sexual predator is. And then becoming concerned about both of my children's safety and realizing, wow, what a perfect situation. I mean, this dude married me when I was 13 years old. I'm having, kids one right after another, and he can just, do whatever he wants with us right in plain sight and not be punished or held accountable for his actions. And so it was after my daughter was born when I was 15 years old that I started to kind of plot my way out of that marriage.
Wow. I mean, I just think, my son's 15. So I think about that, like what it takes at that age to no child should be put in that position whatsoever, but to have that sense of, that wherewithal, that sense of survival, and also being caring for two small babies, like your resilience, right? And that sense of, you get hit with that, like the survival. It's survival for you and for your children.
Right. It was definitely us going into a survival mode.
Yeah.
But, again, the thing about these underage marriages and any marriage for that matter, with the minors in the marriage, because the parents are often the perpetrators, they will not support the young girl when she wants to leave the marriage, because now, I mean, she's more of a burden than she was before she got married. She's got all this baggage, little toddlers and, all this stuff. Right. And the parents have to, so, I mean, they end up, my parents were really adamant about, no, do not ask us for help, and do not go to any other family member and ask them for help. So I knew I was completely on my own if I wanted to get out of that marriage. And because I was a minor, no shelter would take me because I'm a liability. I'm underage. Anytime, if I tried to go to the community to get some support or community resources, I'd be deferred back to like an officer, and the officer would say, well, we need to you're a runaway. We're going to take you back home to your husband. I mean, it's bizarre. And like,
well, first of all,
archaic laws.
Well, and that sentence alone, you're a runaway, meaning you are a child. So we have to take you back to your husband.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Cognitive dissonance is fucking staggering.
Yes.
Do you not hear what you just said, Mr.
Right. I mean, sometimes I do have to take a step back and then like listen to it. And that's what I went through, like when I tried to go to a woman's shelter and when I tried to reach out for support and things like that, those were the messages that were given to me, Yeah. Oh, well, it sounds like you need to go back home to your parents. Oh, your parents, oh, well, you should probably go back home to your husband then, because who's going to take care of you? I can't lease an apartment. I couldn't even get a hotel room. I mean, and then you want to talk about financial control and things like that again can, happen in any marriage at any time. But when you have a minor married to an adult, there's no equality, zero.
And there's no equality and there's no chance at independence.
Right.
And I think it's interesting what you said. I think this is a really important point to drive home, is that minors cannot go to DV shelters or homeless shelters or any kind of shelter, right? Because you said they're a liability, but that's actually like an insurance, like it's actually a legal and insurance liability. It's not just like, oh, we don't know what to do with them. They're a liability. It's like they actually are legally not allowed, not able to take in a minor.
That's
so
right.
You literally have nowhere to go.
You have nowhere to go. And if your angry, controlling spouse has reported you as a runaway, what's going to happen when you go somewhere?
Right.
If it's social services or anything.
Yeah. And again, a spouse reporting a runaway. So if it was a non-minor, right? If it was two consenting adults and the wife runs away or goes away, the response of law enforcement is, well, she's an adult and she's allowed to go where she wants.
Right.
So the idea that a spouse can legally report their underage spouse as a runaway. Like, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
And we're going to get into more of what doesn't make sense, right? Because so how did you get out? How did you get out?
How did I get out? Yes. Okay. So again, going back to the baggage, if the minor decides to leave the marriage and she's got a half dozen chicks in tow or whatever, I was 15 years old and I had toddlers. So by the time I was 16 years old, I had plotted this was my escape plan. I was going to move in with a family member that said it was okay if I moved in with them, and have my 2 children stay with their paternal grandparents while I, quote unquote, get my feet back under me. The grandparents.
His parents. So your husband's
parents. Right. So the kids stayed with their grandparents for about a month while I was with a family member and able to get a job and find a roommate situation where we were able to all live together again. But I didn't, obviously I wasn't forthright with my in-laws about my plan. They just knew like I took off and, they had the kids and da. But I was popping in to visit the kids. And so on one of those visits, I took the kids and never looked back.
Wow. And did he come after you or come after?
Oh, absolutely.
You like left and then put the kids with his parents and he never went to his parents to be like, give me my kids? Or he didn't want to do that because that was your job?
Right. Well, I think there was a little both. There's a little bit of he didn't want to do that and it gave him some freedom. he spent a lot of time looking for me, so he couldn't have the kids like with him. I know there were a couple of different times where he was like in the car like all night with both kids, like looking for me, and all this just crazy stuff. He did at one point leave the children at home all night while he was out looking for me.
Toddlers.
Yes, 1 and 2 years old.
Oh my God.
They were left alone the entire night while he was out looking for me. He didn't give up easily, and we fought for years. And when I got myself enrolled back into high school and the kids were at a daycare center, I mean, he would go there and try to pick them up and take them, and we fought like hell over the kids. He was controlling, threatening, everything that I think any nasty divorce looks like, we went through. I'm not going to give you support. You're not getting child support. I'm going to get custody. And while we're talking about that, my stepmother wrote a letter to the court, to the judge, that said, give those children back to their dad. She's too young to raise them. So now I'm like 17 now. So like I'm 17 and we're still fighting over the children. But at 13 years old, I was old enough in her eyes to get married, to have sex, have children, do all that stuff, wife, lady, whatever. But when I wanted out of the marriage and I wanted the children, I know this one, it makes my head pop off and spin.
Mine too. Holy crap. I mean, I'm glad we can sort of laugh about the absurdity of it at this point, but
right.
it's literally absurd. It makes no sense.
Well, from the financial perspective, I mean, sure, there's that. But then she was also like, oh, she's, out of control. She's being a teenager, and I often go back to that mental space. Like what was going on in my head at 15 years old? What goes on in a 15-year-old, their head when like there's rules in the house, or you have to do this, or you should be doing that. Like, did I have that spunk too? Was I pushing back at my husband for trying to parent me? Who knows? It really, I suppose it doesn't matter. But what the most important part is that I did have the desire for myself to have a better life and to push back and say, I don't have to fucking tolerate this lifestyle. Like there is something out there for me that's better.
Yeah. So what ended up happening with like custody and like, how did that work out? Did you actually have to share custody with this man?
We didn't. Again, we're going to go back into, the legal aspect of all of this. And because I was a minor, I actually couldn't be awarded. This is in the state of California too, by the way. I couldn't be awarded like full custody of my children, and I couldn't get a divorce. I could not get a divorce. I had to wait until I was 18 years old for the divorce to be final. What the court did do is say,
you can get married, but you can't get divorced.
Right. And I will tell you, California does not have a minimum age for marriage right now today. We are fighting.
We're going to get into we're going to get into that. We're going to get into all of that. Because y'all just hold on to your hats because your mind is about to get blown even more. Right. So you can't get divorced because you're not a grown-up, but you can get married. And so you can't be awarded custody of your children.
That's right.
You're not old enough to have custody on your own, but only with a an older man.
Only if I was married to, an old geezer.
An abuser.
Right. So what the court did do is because the children were kind of residing with me, so they honored that and said, okay, because the children are residing right now with mom, then they shall stay with mom and dad will have visits. And that's a whole nother minefield of, we went from him having visits to me saying, oh, hell no, they need to be supervised. I'm worried about my children's safety. And then him breaching, that court order and me taking the kids and just leaving the state of California, breaking all court orders, everything, and living a life on the run to be.
You did?
I did.
Oh, I don't think I knew that part.
For over 10 years.
Did I know that? Maybe I didn't. I don't remember. All of this is like, So you lived on the run for 10 years with your children.
Yes. Yep. In my early 20s, I packed up and left the state of California. I mean, they continued to allow him unsupervised visits. And, my inner wise voice that I believe, damn it, we need to listen to it. Like that natural instinct is so imperative to our survival and safety. And I just reached a breaking point where I really didn't give a shit what rules I had to break to stay safe and to get away from him.
And your kids were approaching the age that you were when he started abusing you. So by that point, you're getting closer and closer to them being sort of
that age, which is really weird. I mean, I have a 13-year-old granddaughter now, and I look at her and I'm thinking, what in the actual fuck? Excuse me. Like, I can't imagine.
I'm right there with you. You could say,
looking at her looking at her and saying, oh my gosh, like, who in the right mind would say, like, okay, well, I'm sorry you got sexually abused for the last 2 years and now you're pregnant, but you're going to have to marry him. It's
disgusting, horrific. So you went on the run and how in that time, like, did you talk to your kids about it? Like, how did this, from just like a parenting perspective, how were these conversations with your children?
Well, they kind of knew they weren't when we left. We moved to Alaska, and we just kind of started a whole new life. And it was really different for me in that I wasn't living in fear of him, because he did stalk us and follow us. And, he was constantly recording us and just everything. And so it was the first time in my life that I experienced, I could breathe. A big exhale. And I think the kids, they sensed that. They knew that life was calmer. And even to this day, my children would say some of the fondest memories in their life growing up was the time that we spent in Alaska. Eventually relocated to Portland, Oregon. And my ex did catch up with us, but he didn't interfere with our lives after that. Like, I would get phone calls from the school that would say, oh, he called and he was asking, how they're doing or this and that, but he didn't actually interfere.
Interesting. So do your kids have any relationship with him now?
Not now. They tried, and I supported them. It was as the kids were getting older in middle school and, freshmen in high school and things like that, when they started to do the math and ask the questions, I'd give them enough, you give your kids enough information that you feel they can emotionally process.
Yeah. Right.
And so by the time they were junior, senior in high school, they kind of knew that I was kind of forced into marriage young. And the night before my oldest son graduated from high school, I took him aside and I said, hey, look, I want to tell you that there is a possibility that your biological father could show up tomorrow. I know that he knows where we live. He knows the schools, that you guys have been going to, and he could potentially show up. And so I, was able to give the kid that information so that they weren't blindsided.
Yeah.
My biggest failure was that I didn't pull my daughter aside and tell her. And looking back, it's like, how did I not do that? Right. And so here we are, huge high school graduation. And my daughter, who is a junior at the same high school, comes running up to me and she's like, Mom, there's this guy here and he says he's my dad. And my heart just sank. Like, I didn't prepare her for that. And it was just totally insane. And this dude he's worked for Universal Studios, Paramount Motion Pictures. He's into videography and all of that. So of course he comes walking up to me with this huge camera. And I was just like, shut it the fuck down. He's recording my daughter being totally devastated, me not knowing how to process him showing up there. And just so after that, fast forward just a couple of weeks, at that point, I had told my children, wait until you're 18. When you're 18 years old, you can do whatever you want and go have a relationship with him. And it doesn't involve me. And I encourage you to do that because he's your father and I know you want to know him. And so both my son and my daughter from that marriage tried to see what it would be like to have a relationship with him. And it didn't last long. Yeah. My daughter said he creeped her out, and my son I don't think he was ever fully comfortable. I think he tried, he wanted to know his father and be close to his father, but also this is a person that really didn't know how to parent.
Right.
You've got, these grown children and what do you have to offer?
Right. Nothing.
And
good for them. This is the question that I am asked, over and over and over again is about, and I think your situation is far more heightened, but it's actually a really great example. I think the same rules still apply. They ask, will it screw up my kids if I leave my abusive situation, right? Because at least I'm there and I can sort of mitigate it or keep control over it. And I always say like, no,
that's my default answer. No.
If you want to give your children a chance or even a hope at healthy relationships in the future, you have to take them out of that situation and give them the opportunity to see what else there is. And even if for 50% of the time, even if you and your ex had, I hate even calling him that, had shared custody, they still would have been aware that there's something else. It's like opening the lid of a box and having them be able to pop their head out and be like, oh, there's all this too.
Right.
Whereas if you stay in that abusive situation, their reality is only that. Mm-hmm. And you gave your kids the opportunity to see and that you gave them discernment. You gave them objectivity so that when they went and saw him, they realized like, oh no, he's actually pretty fucked up. Right? Whereas had they stayed with him, they would not know that. They would be still trying to fight for his love, and it would have impacted all of their future relationships, So I think it's yours is a very stark example of why we need to not stay in abusive relationships.
Right.
But your kids then grew up with the ability to discern for themselves. And they did, in a healthy way, it sounds like.
Right. And, even moving through relationships after that, if I wasn't happy, I didn't stay.
Yeah.
And, that could have, I'm always unpacking this stuff. But it could have been part of, my father raised me. My parents divorced when I was quite young. And, my father had a lot of different relationships when I was growing up. And so naturally, like by example, I'm like, oh, well, when shit hits the fan or things aren't working out, I'm packing and leaving. And a part of me is proud of that because I don't tolerate unhappiness. I will pack up and leave. And there's the other part that says, oh, wait, way back when, perhaps I was just unable to work on things. I don't know. What I know now is, yes, I have the emotional capacity to work on things and talk about things. But in the past, I bounced really fast. I did not stay in a relationship where I was unhappy for too long.
Yeah. It's never black and white. There's always the gray. There's always all the, look, we're complicated human beings. And you're also a complicated human being who has that complexity compounded by trauma, right? Very real trauma. So yeah, it's like shit we'll be unpacking for the rest of our lives.
Right.
As long as we're continuing to unpack it, right? That's
right. Yes. Don't slam that bag shut.
No, right? Like as long as you're continuing to unpack it, then that's the best we can hope for, right?
Right.
And now we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor today. Today's sponsor is SoberLink. Now, the SoberLink system is designed to make parenting time safer with real-time remote alcohol monitoring. SoberLink uniquely combines a breathalyzer with wireless connectivity and is the only system that includes facial recognition, tamper detection, and advanced reporting. Parents can submit a test anytime, anywhere, thanks to SoberLink's wireless technology, which delivers test results by text message or email to the concerned parties. Simplify co-parenting arrangements by using the system that provides transparency and proof of sobriety throughout the day. Flexible schedules combined with real-time delivery of results make SoberLink the experts in remote alcohol monitoring technology. And for a limited time, get $50 off your device by emailing info@soberlink.com and mentioning the Divorce Survival Guide. And now back to our show.
Well, and so going back to when I did leave that, child marriage, because my value was so low. The personal, self-worth, your value. Like if my parents were saying, at 13 years old, my life can be tossed to this man, or, and then being with this man, just having no real self-esteem or knowing my self-worth or value, I went into another incredibly abusive relationship, which was that's where my domestic violence experience came in. Like with my first marriage, it's a really gray area because of the sexual abuse for 2 years and then being married. But yes, I was raped by him. And yes, he took advantage of me during that marriage. He did not beat me. Mm-hmm. My second relationship is where I experienced, literally being pistol whipped, having a gun to my head. This is about worth. This is about how we raise our children to not be valued. That is exactly where that came from, is that I felt I was not valued. I didn't matter. And so this was just the way life is. And again, those words coming from like my stepmother, do you think you're the first one? Do you think you're the only one this ever has happened to? This is part of the life. You have to figure out how to live. You got to live with it.
Yeah.
And so that relationship was off and on. And after getting out of that one, I definitely I was on the road to recovery as far as unpacking all of the trauma, counseling, and saying I am worth more than how I've been treated.
Yeah. It's not just how you've been treated, but it's also the choices that you then made, right? Like you didn't have a choice in the first one, in your child marriage. You don't have a choice in that.
Right.
But then because that's your conditioning, especially at those formative years, hello,
right.
And then from before with your father, like then the choices that you made were impacted later on. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, my love. There's just so much. Right. And then there's the work to be done to unpack, as we were talking about, all of that. So now I want to talk about your advocacy work. I want to make sure that because this is super important. So you have taken this and you have hit the ground running. So tell me about the laws in almost all 50 states, or at this point, 46 states, and how they actually support child marriage.
Well, okay. So each state, makes their own laws. And we have 12 states do not track child marriage at all. And 10 states have no minimum age for marriage. And right now, what we're doing is obviously fighting state by state to get an 18 no exceptions. So the loopholes that allow child marriage aren't in your face. I mean, it's profound to me how legislators really don't know that, their state is allowing this to happen. But it's in the fine writing. It's the little writing that we put in there thinking that we're saving children. Oh, well, then no marriage license shall be issued unless there is a court investigation. Well, I could tell you firsthand that there is no way, if there was some sort of investigation, that I would have outed my parents for the manipulation or the sexual abuse. I mean, these are not safety nets. And as a matter of fact, they put the minor at risk even more, because the minor is being grilled like, don't you say this, don't you say that. They go to this appointment at Department of Human Services, go home, beat the child for saying what they shouldn't have. These safety nets put the girls at risk even more. One of the greatest risks is that a state will say, okay, well, if the minimum age is 14 or 15, how about if we move it to 16 or 17? Well, we've learned now that the 16 and 17-year-olds are the ones at the greatest risk, because we're like, oh, they're almost adults. Oh, they're almost out of high school. But we know now that they're going to drop out of high school and they're like 4 times less likely to go to college. And so the 16 and 17-year-old girls are even at greater risk. So we've got to bump it up to 18 no exceptions if we want the children of today and tomorrow to live their life to their fullest potential. Because the devastating consequences of child marriage ripple after generation to generation. Like my kids they're impacted by what happened to me. And we know that now. It's not like, oh, this thing happened to my mom and I'm fine.
Right. No, of course they are. Of course they are. So you have
gone to bat with a number of nonprofit organizations now that have sort of come together, right, to try and fight this. And you have gone to bat and changed legislation in 4 states, which is amazing, but it still blows my fucking mind that it's only 4 out of 50 states that have said, you know what, you're right, this is fucking crazy. Nobody should get married.
If it was that easy, that would be great. It takes a lot of fighting to get there. Yeah. And in 2018, well, just really quick, in 2018, child marriage was still legal in all 50 states.
Yeah. And there are actually people who oppose the legislation. And those are the ones that like make my head explode. What is their argument against changing this legislation?
Well, we get the argument that a 16 or 17-year-old girl that has become pregnant would benefit from being married to the father of the child and not having this child out of wedlock and have that financial, support and stability of being in a union. And again, we know now that the divorce rate is like 80% for these young marriages. We also know that as soon as she gets pulled out of the home because she got married, she's going to drop out of school, become a stay-at-home mom. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but it really complicates her ability to ever get back in school, to finish school, and to try to go to college.
Yes.
Without that. We know now that if the 16 or 17-year-old gets pregnant and stays at home, she has a greater chance of becoming the person that she desires to be, alone with the parental support, not married, removed from home, and trying. You're a fish out of water.
Yeah.
Flopping around, trying to figure it out. That's it's the Romeo and Juliet where we think, oh, these two, they're in love and they should be married. And we all know Romeo and Juliet ended horribly anyway, but we use that as a reference. I don't know why. And that's the 1%. I mean, that is like the 1%, like, oh, they're both underage and we should allow them to get married. No. So we have these laws and all these little, the fine print that allow that, but it's actually destroying millions of girls' lives. And some of the numbers that we do have is from 2000 to 2010, almost 250,000 minors were married to adult men. Now, remember, 12 states don't track that data, so that number is higher.
Yeah. And let's be clear, it's underage girls being married to older men, right? There are very few cases where it's flipped the other way. Right.
Young girls to much older men. And so with all of that information, we still get that pushback for the happy high school sweethearts. So we're keeping all these, negative, nasty, archaic laws in place just for that one tiny 1% of the high school sweethearts that got pregnant. Well, it's just, and why can't they wait? Why are we destroying young girls' lives for that potential one couple, that high school sweethearts that can wait until they're 18?
But we're also not talking about high school sweethearts. We're talking, right? Like, in terms of getting the ability to get married. Yeah, they can wait. Yeah, they can fucking wait. And also I think another argument that is made is that, by conservative groups is that if we don't allow them to get married, then it'll increase the rate of abortion, right? If they can't get married, then the girl will probably abort the baby.
That's not really it. But one of the things that we do get is that it is infringing on reproductive rights. And we've actually, from the California Planned Parenthood a few years ago, pushed back on us that this is infringing on religious rights and reproductive rights. It gets I know, I see you're like perplexed, and you
guys can't see my face. It's just so Planned Parenthood doesn't want a limit on child marriage because it's somehow, I don't know, how does it infringe on reproductive rights? I don't understand.
That's a good question. And it gets really, really complicated. By spiritual practice and different religious practices and, unions and all of that and reproductive rights. It does infringe on that if we decide to say no, 18, no exceptions. We have made huge progress with some, with Planned Parenthood and some of the other organizations that have pushed back. So we are moving forward, and that when we're able to say, look, we've got to just look directly at the impacts of child marriage on these children and understand that they are worth saving, and we have to do an 18 no exception.
It feels to me like it's state sanctioned and family sanctioned kidnap and rape. Like
that's what it felt like to me. I mean,
sure it did. And it's like, I'm sure it's more complicated, but like at the end of the day, no, it's fucking not. Like at the end of the day, it's actually fucking not.
It's a no-brainer.
At all.
It's a no-brainer. Like why?
Oh my God.
Right.
So it's not that deep. Like,
and it's another form of sex trafficking. I mean, we are now linking it together, and that's exactly how I felt. I mean, when I became a 13-year-old bride, I felt like a sex slave. And this is one of the ways that sex trafficking is happening. Like it didn't happen to me, thank goodness, in the way that it has to others. But, imagine a 35-year-old man marrying a 13 or 14-year-old girl and then having, ownership over her and being able to loan her out for sexual favors and be paid for it. So, and this is all happening just right under our nose.
It's so, anyway. But the good news is that you have changed legislation
in 4 states. So we were able to get Pennsylvania and Minnesota during the lockdown, which is wonderful. I did fly out to Minnesota last February. And, we did what we call a chain in. I was with Unchained at Last, who's actually the leading nonprofit that's spearheading child marriage in the U.S. And we were able to get another bright line bill of 18 no exceptions. And we just keep chipping away.
Yeah, I love it. One state at a time. So where can people go to learn more about this issue and get involved if they so choose? What do we need to do to have this actually go across all 50 states?
So, well, right now I'm working with Global Hope 365 in California to end child marriage in California. So you can go to the California Coalition to End Child Marriage.org. Visiting that site, you'll find a little advocacy page. Click on it, and you can enter the county that you live in and request a resolution. And Global Hope 365 will provide you with the paperwork that you need, because we have 5 counties in California that have committed to a resolution to 18 no exceptions. Now, the resolutions are not legally binding, but it's a public statement. And the more of those we get, you have it under your belt, tools when we go in to totally end it. So California Coalition to End Child Marriage.org. Just to learn more about child marriage, I would recommend visiting the Unchained at Last website, where they just have all kinds of information. You can hover over like each state in the US and see, the statistics, the numbers, the minimum age, how many have been married in X amount of years in that state. I am a founding member of the National Coalition to End Child Marriage in the United States. Again, so that website is National Coalition to End Child Marriage in the United States.org. That's a big one.
All of this, we'll put all the links in the show notes, because it's a lot of websites, but we'll put it all in the show notes.
And of course, I'm like the human trafficking 1-800 number that definitely I want to shout out is 1-888-373-7888. And we want to make sure that that's available out there for those. If you see something, that's the whole thing. If you see something, speak up. I can't tell you how many times, like, we were in public and I just wanted someone to save me. Like, people would notice me with this older man and look and have this strange look. And I'd have this feeling like, yes, can you call someone, please?
Right.
And so.
Can you see that? Say that number again, Dawn, just so that we.
1-888-373 7888. And that's for human trafficking.
Great. And then also, if you want to learn, sort of hear more of this Dawn's story and other stories like it, there's the documentary. What's it called? I don't even know.
It's
stumbled upon it one night.
It was with A&E, although I know it's available through like Apple TV, Hulu, Amazon Prime.
I found it on Hulu.
Okay.
Yeah, I found it on Hulu with Elizabeth Vargas. Do you remember the name?
It's The Untold Stories. I Was a Child Bride, a 2-hour documentary with 4 survivors. And what's great about that film is that I think it does touch the different backgrounds, because often people are like, oh, you must have gone to another country to get married, or, oh, you're, from this spiritual cult or something. And each one of our stories is just so different and dynamic that it really shows you child marriage in the US knows no moral compass or, economic background. It's just happening all over.
Dawn, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I so appreciate it. I so adore you.
Thank you.
And
likewise.
I really hope that we all get this 18 no exceptions across the United States. It's so important.
What I'm learning is it's educating our communities, because people don't know. And so I have so much gratitude just for the opportunity to be here and to share this information and educate others. Ending child marriage is part of the Sustainable Goal Act of 2030. So we've got, it's like educate, because we need to end this. I want to meet that goal.
I am down to do whatever we can. I'm going to get my advocacy hat on and hit California.
Yes. Yay. Thank you. Let me know how I can help.
Well, yeah, I will. But yeah, because this is crazy, just crazy. So I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that you made it out and that you have turned your life into this incredible advocacy work to stop it from happening to other people. And also you are happily recoupled, right? I mean, I just want to say that
right.
too.
Happy ending, thank you for mentioning that. I am with a fabulous partner and I feel loved and safe and just accepted for who I am. And I'm so supported in all the work that I do. And I couldn't be happier. Yeah. So thank you. Thanks for that mention. And thanks again for having me, Kate. And I admire all of what you do and represent so much. Thank you.
Back at you, babe.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorce Survival Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in and leave me a review. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at the Divorce Survival Guide. I'll see you next time, and until then, remember, you, my love, deserve to be happy.